Welcome back. Today we're diving into the most controversial royal report card of the year. 2025 is coming to an end, and it's time to grade every single member of the British royal family. And let me tell you, for some people, this has been an absolutely terrible year. Let's start with Prince Harry. And I have absolutely no shame in saying that Harry gets a big fat F. Harry, what have you done this year that's so incredibly annoying? Where do I even begin? Especially from an American perspective, Harry's behavior is completely obnoxious. This man doesn't understand his own country, yet wants to speak on behalf of America.
And especially from an American perspective, I find Prince Harry and his inability to, I think, understand this country quite obnoxious and want to speak on behalf of this country.
What kind of audacity is that? This year, we've seen a major change in Harry. He's become a cosplay royal. Yes, you heard that right. He's pretty much given up on Hollywood, and what's he doing now? Going around everywhere, giving speeches and grabbing bags of cash. He went to Canada for a real estate conference. Mate, what do you know about real estate? You don't even live there.
Hollywood, and he's basically going around and speaking on behalf of different events and just grabbing bags of cash, like going to Canada for a real estate conference.
But what's most problematic is that Harry now sees himself as a world mover and shaker. He went to Ukraine, inserts himself into different events. He's following exactly the same tracks as his wife, Meghan. Meghan started this strategy years ago, pouring money into PR to promote herself, whether she actually accomplished anything or not. And Harry's doing exactly the same thing now. From a royalist perspective, this is incredibly annoying to watch. This man will keep trying this again and again. Harry is such a waste of money. And let's talk about the security case. His risk assessment is under review. Hopefully it comes back as nothing. But I'm terrified that one day this man will ask American taxpayers for money for his security because he wants his IP status back. This man is obnoxious every year, but this year he's crossed all limits.
He knows nothing about real estate, especially in Canada. He doesn't live there. Why is he speaking? Well, somebody's going to pay him to do that. And obviously, we've seen that towards the end of this year. We saw him go to Ukraine. We've seen him really trying to insert himself into this place as a world mover and shaker, very much following along the tracks of his wife, who sort of started this years and years ago before she met Harry by pouring a bunch of money into PR to promote her for things, let's say, that she didn't fully accomplish. And Harry's very much following the same track. It's sort of annoying to see from a royalist perspective. And he's just going to constantly try this again and again and again. He's just such a waste of money. And when you think of this security case, especially, although.
And look, it's not just about being annoying. The situation is becoming more and more desperate. Look at Harry's events. How desperate they've become. The speeches are completely hackneyed. He's not revealing anything new.
Speeches are becoming more hackneyed. He's not revealing anything. He looks miserable. He looks old. He's so desperately unhappy.
Look at his face. Miserable, old, desperately unhappy. This man is a huge problem for the British royal family. Because when desperation increases, risks increase too.
But the problem for the British royal family, Brittany, and why I think he fully deserves this F grade, is that desperation is going to lead to risks.
And what kind of risks are we talking about? Look at Prince Andrew's example. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor formed a completely dodgy relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Sarah Ferguson begged Epstein for tens of thousands of dollars. All of this happened because of desperation. So the question now is, will Harry reach that same point? This is a legitimate concern that needs to be addressed. If we don't handle it now, it could become a massive crisis in the future.
And those are the types
Exactly.
of risks that saw Andrew Mountbatten Windsor form a completely dodgy relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, that saw Sarah Ferguson, the former Duchess of York, beg Epstein to provide her tens of thousands of dollars. And at some point, do we risk Harry getting to that point too?
Let me tell you why Harry is already becoming Andrew's future. Andrew is a warning. Harry will become exactly that in 10, 20 years. He's already grabbing bags of cash from things that aren't even his job. Look at the Canada case.
20 years. He's already going around and grabbing bags of cash from things that he's not associated with.
It seems like Harry wants to wiggle his way back into the UK's good graces by appealing to Canada. He thinks he's a folk hero in Ukraine. Absolutely crazy. When Harry speaks and you listen to him, he sounds completely deluded, completely disconnected from reality. Remember his long tantrum on BBC this year? He was calling his security case outcome a stitch-up job. Mate, don't you understand? When you leave a job, you don't get to take the perks with you. Harry is a huge liability for the British royal family. I can say with certainty that he will get into a relationship with somebody dodgy if he hasn't already. Did you see Kris Jenner's recent party? He was flirting with the Kardashians there. Harry is a ticking time bomb. If the royals don't address this now, he's going to come back and bite the family. The time has come. Take the titles. Remove him from the line of succession. Harry has made his decisions. Now he has to live with them.
And in the particular case of Canada, you almost feel like Harry is trying to wiggle his way back into the good graces of the UK by appealing to Canada and like becoming, he thinks he's a folk hero in Ukraine, like just absolutely crazy things. The guy, when he talks and you listen to him, he sounds completely deluded, completely disconnected from reality. I think it was this year that he had, that long temper tantrum on the BBC, calling security case, the outcome of it, a stitch-up job, like not understanding that when you leave a job, like being a royal, you don't get to take with you. But Harry, I think, is a huge liability for the royal family. I think he will get into a relationship with somebody dodgy if he hasn't already. I mean, you could see him sort of wiggling his way in and trying to flirt with the Kardashians at Kris Jenner's recent party. So Harry's definitely a huge, huge liability here, and one that if they don't address, he is going to come back and bite the royals at some point. So
now let's talk about Meghan Markle. And if I could give her an F I absolutely would. American Riviera Orchard. What kind of train wreck was that? I'm shocked by how bad it was. Pure awfulness. Meghan has set a new standard for disaster. Brand management, product launches, everything totally bad. This year, she had her big relaunch on Instagram. And
Meghan Markle and grade. What's she done to deserve that, Brittany?
oh my gosh, if I could give her like minus, I would. Like the whole thing with like American Riviera Orchard becoming as ever and the whole train her business. I mean, that has been fast to see. I'm like shocked by how bad it is. Like,
what did we see? So many more failures than successes. She used to sign off every post with, "As ever, Meghan." She stopped doing that now. Wild inconsistencies everywhere. There's no concrete brand strategy at all. It seems like she's making decisions based on the whims of the day. Mate, that's not how you run a business. Remember the Harper's Bazaar photo shoot? Simply bizarre. The Paris Fashion Week outfit? I'll tell you, a 70-year-old woman from Boca Raton would wear that dress, not a 40-something duchess. Horrible. And the Balenciaga connection? This is the fashion brand that's been under fire in recent years for distasteful and exploitative photo ads. Absolute train wreck for Meghan. And the show majorly flopped. Remember the "I'm Meghan Sussex" tantrum? Then the next moment, "We're not using Sussex." Wild year. To summarize in one line, 2025, the rise and fall of Meghan Markle. She had a peak when the first season launched, when the first brand launch came out. After that, cratering ever since. Every interview reveals that she lacks depth as a person. She's not as intellectual or as interesting as she seems to think she is. And have you noticed? She's still stuck on achievements from her childhood. I mean, the dish soap commercial and brownies. Are these her adult accomplishments? Disastrous year. A disaster of epic proportions.
just pure awfulness of her brand is truly astounding. How badly it's managed and run, the product launches, everything totally bad. Obviously, this year was her big relaunch back into Instagram, and we've seen so many more failures than successes on there. And she's constantly like, she used to sign off, I think, all her posts on her regular Instagram with as ever Meghan. Of course, she stopped doing that. So we've seen wild inconsistencies this year and how like there's just no concrete brand strategy for her at all. I think everything changes on the whims of the day, which is not how you should run a business at all. And of course, we had the Harper's Bazaar photo shoot that was simply bizarre. We have Meghan Markle, going to Paris Fashion Week in an outfit I can only describe as something a woman from Boca Raton would wear who was in her 70s. It was horrible. And obviously, you had the connection with Balenciaga as well, which was a fashion brand that has been under fire for recent years for some really distasteful and exploitative photo ads and all these sorts of things. And so it's been an absolute train wreck for Meghan, not to mention the fact that her show has flopped majorly. We had the I'm Meghan Sussex tantrum, but then we're not using Sussex. Like this has been a wild year for Meghan. But overall, failure. I think this whole year could be summed up as the fall of Meghan Markle. She had a peak when the first season launch, brand launch came out, and then it's been cratering ever since. And every interview she does, she reveals, I think, the lack of depth that she has as a person. She's not as intellectual or as interesting as she seems to think she is. And she's really stuck on things she's achieved as a child, which tells you she has really no accomplishments to her name as an adult because about the dish soap commercial. And now it's about the brownies that she did, I think, for 1 year. So this has just been.
Seriously, I've got whiplash just thinking about Meghan's U-turns. This year, she stole a podcast idea from a young woman, how to be a female founder. Then what happened? Such a disaster. Such a flop that it's been erased from history. Nobody even talks about it anymore. 2025 was crisis stations. The PR is impossible now because the strategy is all over the place. No direction, no clarity.
It really is. It really is. I mean, my God, I've got whiplash just thinking about
It's all over the
all
place.
of her various U-turns. I mean, Brittany, it's astonishing to think this year she stole a podcast from some young woman, how to be a female founder. Then it was such a disaster, such a flop. It's almost just been erased from her history, never to be spoken about again. I think totally 2025 was crisis stations. The PR is impossible now because the strategy is so all over the place. But look, let's move on.
Now let's move to Prince Andrew. I've given him a D grade. Why a D? Because at least he gave up his title without much fuss. That's the only reason. Otherwise, he'd get an F. But we need to be fair. Andrew doesn't get as much flack as Harry and Meghan because he's remained pretty quiet in exile. He's not constantly trying to poke his head into things. Yes, he's subtly trying, at the funeral trying to place himself. But it's not to the level of obnoxiousness as Harry and Meghan. Obviously, his Epstein dealings are there, lying about how long he was in contact with him. All of this comes back very negatively on the monarchy. But credit where it's due, he's sort of taken his lumps and is withering away. And honestly, you can't ask for much more than that. If there's a book coming in the future, the grade might change to an F. But right now, he's moving on. He's accepted the loss of his title. He's attempting to go into obscurity. That's all you can really ask for in this situation.
Fuss, and that's the only reason he got the D. Otherwise, he should get the F. But to be fair to Andrew, sort of the reason I think in some ways he doesn't get as much flack as Harry and Meghan do is that, yes, he is in exile, but he remained pretty quiet. He's not constantly poke his head into things. I mean, he's trying, he was at the funeral, just subtly placed himself or what have you, but it's to the level of near obnoxiousness Meghan. But obviously, with his dealings with Epstein, with his lying about how long he was in contact, and these sorts of things, all this comes back very, very negatively on the monarchy. And to be fair to him, he's sort of taken his lumps and he sort of kind of withered away. And you can't ask for much more than, if there's a book coming in the offing, hopefully that's not the case. That would be the only time where it would change an F. But at this point, he's moving. He's accepted the loss of his. He's moving. He's attempting to kind of go into obscurity, and that's all you can really ask for in this particular situation.
I gave Sarah Ferguson a D as well. Maybe I should have ranked her a bit higher, but seriously, she doesn't deserve a higher ranking. Obviously, her connection with Jeffrey Epstein was longer than publicly stated. She's as bad as Andrew. Both of them have been going around for years, grabbing bags of cash from questionable people. Their behavior has been bad for so many years, so what came was deserved. Yes, Sarah tried to rehab her image, so I'll give her props for that. But the weight of so many poor decisions had to culminate in something eventually. She's lost book deals. And honestly, it's deserved, especially because her track record with supporting various causes hasn't been the greatest. Now Sarah is licking her wounds. Hopefully she'll figure out something else to do with her life. D for the year. Not as bad as some, but not great either.
Seriously.
She's not quite as bad as some of the others, but definitely she obviously had connections with Jeffrey Epstein longer, she publicly stated, and she's as bad as Andrew. Like have been going around, especially her going around grabbing bags of cash from people who are questionable for years and years at this point. And so it's just one of those things where they kind of got what was coming to them, but it was such bad behavior over the years. She had really been trying to rehab her image, so I do give her props for that. But obviously, the weight of so many poor decisions over the years had to culminate in something, and this was it. And she's lost book deals and all these sorts of things. And in some ways, it's deserved, especially because she doesn't have the greatest track record with supporting various causes and these sorts of things. So at this point, Sarah is licking her wounds. And so hopefully she's got something else to do, you could say, with her. But that is Sarah at this point. So she gets a D for not as bad as some, but
I don't believe in cancel culture, but Fergie has been given so many chances time and again. Each time she was welcomed back, and each time, more dodgy relations. Those emails were so damning. She was begging Epstein for money, and this was when she knew Epstein was a pedophile. He'd already gone to jail. Then, publicly withdrew support, said, "I'll never be in touch with him again," but secretly, desperately apologizing to Epstein. This is someone you cannot trust. Look, I personally support standing by someone. I stood by two criminals myself, Tommy Robinson and Lucy Connolly, because I believed they were political prisoners. In history, there were people like Nelson Mandela who received support. But Fergie's problem? She only wanted to continue her relationship with Epstein for financial reasons, nothing altruistic about it. She lied to the public while doing something altogether different behind the scenes. This hypocrisy is unforgivable, and that's something Fergie is dealing with now.
Even cancellation or cancel culture. But the problem is, Brittany, Fergie has been given so many chances, time and again. She has been welcomed back in. And each time, rather than actually do something good, become a positive force, there's more dodgy relations. And I guess the emails that were just so damning were her begging Epstein for money, firstly, which is so unbecoming because, of course, at that point, she knew he was a paedophile. He'd gone to jail. And then desperately apologizing to him after she had gone public to withdraw support for him and to say, "Oh, I'll never be in touch with him again. Our relationship is finished." And I thought, this is someone who you cannot trust, because I don't mind if someone wants to stand by a human being. There's lots of reasons to do so. I mean, let's just look at my personal context, right? I've stood by two criminals over the course of the past year, Tommy Robinson and Lucy Connolly. Both, I believe, were political prisoners in the United Kingdom. And in the past, you can look at lots of people who've been locked up, including Nelson Mandela, who people have chosen to support. But the problem with Fergie is that she only wanted to continue a relationship with Epstein for financial reasons. There was nothing altruistic about it. And she wasn't honest about it. She lied to the public while doing something altogether different behind the scenes. And it's that sort of hypocrisy which I find unforgivable.
Now, let's talk about King Charles. This was tough, but I think it's fair. I gave him a C+. Why so low? The Andrew situation. Charles should have dealt with Andrew immediately when he became king. The writing was on the wall. The C+ grade is because handling the Andrew situation in the last couple of months was a disaster. First it was, oh, he won't use the title. Then 2 weeks later, oh, we're stripping everything. What happened? Didn't deal with the problem initially, so tried the least damaging option. Let it linger. Then had to overreact to correct it. If he dealt with it proactively, this mess wouldn't have happened. The monarchy right now is reactive when it should be proactive. Mitigate situations so harsh reactions aren't necessary. The other issue? Harry. Harry is a problem that must be addressed. He will become Andrew or worse. He's already worse because Harry and Meghan are monetizing their titles for personal gain, which they're not supposed to do. If Charles lets this go on, the monarchy overall will be dragged down. The family will be dragged down. Charles has to address this now. Really, really does. He can't let this linger on because he wants to protect this institution.
So I was trying to decide what to do. And King Charles,
Tough, but I
almost
think
more
fair, to be honest.
it's hard because Charles allowed the Andrew situation. Andrew is something he should have dealt with almost immediately when he became king. He should have seen the writing on the wall, tried to figure this out. And really, the C+, why the grade is, I think, brought down so much is how the Andrew situation was handled in these last couple of months. It's, oh, he won't use the title. And then 2 weeks later, oh, we're stripping everything. And it's like, okay, so you got there because you didn't deal with the problem in the first place. You tried to do the least, let's say, damaging option to your brother, just kind of let it linger. And then, oh, you have to almost overreact to correct it. And it's just something where if, again, this had been dealt with, I would argue more proactively rather than reactively, because I feel like the monarchy right now is very reactive, where they should be more proactive, trying to mitigate situations to the extent where they don't come something where you have to react really harshly to sort of try to get the narrative back where you. So that's part of it. The other half is obviously Harry is a problem that has to be dealt with. He will become Andrew or worse. And I mean, he's already worse in some ways because him and Meghan are very much monetizing their titles for their own personal gain, which is not what they're supposed to do. And if Charles lets this go on, it's dragging down the monarchy overall. It's dragging down him. It's dragging down the family. And so he has to address this. He really, really does. And he can't just allow it to linger on.
The British monarchy overall has been slow to modernize, slower than you'd think. It's time to take an accurate assessment of where things are. There are peppercorn rent issues now. Questions about the Duchy of Cornwall and Lancaster. Charles needs to understand. It's not just his mother or grandmother's era anymore. The monarchy is complacent because Queen Elizabeth was so powerful and beloved. But this new generation? Not quite so much. So you have to be more proactive, more strategic. The monarchy isn't there yet, and Charles needs to be better and more concise. Otherwise, I don't know if the monarchy will be here in the next couple of decades.
Overall, the British monarchy has been slow to sort of modernize, slower than you would think. And I think this is just a time where they need to take an accurate assessment of where things are at. You know, you have the peppercorn rent issues now. There were some questions about the Duchy of Cornwall and Lancaster. So Charles needs to, I think, it's not just his grandmother, or sorry, his mother anymore. I think in some ways they're still complacent because Queen Elizabeth was so powerful and so beloved. But this new generation, not quite so much. So you almost have to be more proactive, more strategic in your thinking. And I just don't think the monarchy is there. And Charles, as the head of it, I think he needs to be better and more concise at this point in figuring out how to navigate things. Otherwise, I don't know if the monarchy will be here in the next couple of decades.
Now let's talk about the superstars. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, gets an A grade. What her husband lacks in charisma and visibility, Sophie makes up for. Sophie has had a lot of high-profile trips this year. Congo, South and Central America, and I believe somewhere else as well. She's done a lot of work for women who have been victims of violence and war. The first member of the British royal family to go to Ukraine? Sophie. Sophie has done a lot of great work, a lot of good high-profile work. It's hopeful to see them utilize her more. With Edward would be even better, because Sophie brings star power that Edward lacks. Sophie has been a fantastic asset to the monarchy, a great working royal. For the solid year of work and impressive trips, she was in South and Central America for over a week. She's done fantastic work. It doesn't get as much attention as the rest of the royals, but it's really solid.
Tough, but scoring a very impressive A grade is Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. Her husband lacks Brittany in charisma and visibility. Sophie makes up for.
Sophie does. Sophie has had a lot of, I think, high profile trips this year. She went to Congo, she went to South and Central America, and I want to say she went to somewhere else as well. I'm sort of forgetting some of those, but she has done a lot of work of women who have been victims of violence and war. She went to Ukraine this year. The first member of the British royal family to go to Ukraine was Sophie. And so Sophie has done a lot of great work, and I think a lot of good high profile work. It's hopeful to see them utilize her a bit more. I think would be great her with Edward, because I think she brings us some of the star power that Edward lacks. And so Sophie has been a fantastic asset to the monarchy, a great working royal. And so I think for the solid year of work this year and the impressive trips she's been able to have, because she was in South and Central America for like over a week. So she has done a lot of great work. It doesn't get as much of attention as the rest of the royals.
And now, the favorite royal of 2025, Princess Anne. Calling Anne a hard-working royal is an understatement. What Anne does, no fuss, no muss. And she does those bread-and-butter royal engagements so incredibly well that she's an asset to the monarchy. What Anne does is almost irreplaceable. I believe she's one of the most impactful members of the monarchy. There was a survey that came out a couple of years ago. It showed that it's not the big things that connect people to the monarchy. It's those little bread-and-butter royal engagements. When a royal goes to a farm, a factory, a small town. These engagements have the most impact in the long run. And Anne does those all the time. Fantastic job. Anne is the hardest working member of the British royal family, and whenever she retires, I think her retirement age is maybe 90. It'll be so sad to see her leave that role. The British royal family needs another Princess Anne as a replacement because she's perhaps one of the most important cogs in the royal machine. They need another Anne. So that was the royal report card for 2025. Do you agree with these grades? Let me know in the comments.